He texted you, "Good morning," every single day from the first week. He called you his soulmate before you even knew his middle name. He showered you with compliments so intense they almost felt like too much, except you didn't let yourself think that, because it felt incredible. It felt like finally, someone saw you, someone chose you, someone couldn't get enough of you. And then, somewhere around month two, something shifted. The text slowed down. The compliments turned into criticism. The person who once said you were perfect started pointing out everything wrong with you. And you found yourself confused, chasing the version of him that disappeared, wondering what you did wrong. Here's the truth nobody tells you. You didn't do anything wrong. You were love bombed, and your brain was never built to see it coming. Love bombing isn't romance, it's a manipulation tactic, and understanding how it hijacks your brain is the only way to protect yourself from it. So, let's break down exactly what happens inside your head when someone love bombs you, the 6 signs that prove it's happening, and how to spot it before you're in too deep. First, let's talk about what's actually happening neurologically, because this isn't just moving fast. When someone floods you with attention, affection, and validation early on, your brain releases massive amounts of dopamine. Dopamine is the chemical tied to reward and craving. It's the same chemical involved in addiction. Normally, attraction and trust build slowly in small doses over weeks and months, but love bombing skips that process entirely. It gives your brain a flood of reward all at once, which creates a high. And just like any high, your brain starts to crave more of it. This is why, even when red flags start appearing, you don't run, you chase. Your nervous system has already been wired to associate this person with intense pleasure, and pulling away from that feels like withdrawal, not relief. Sign number one, the relationship moves at an unnatural speed. Within days, they're calling you their girlfriend, their boyfriend, the love of their life. Within weeks, they're talking about moving in together, meeting your family, planning a future. It feels romantic in the moment, like something out of a movie, but healthy intimacy takes time to build because trust takes time to build. When someone skips every normal stage of getting to know you, it's not because they're more passionate than everyone else. It's because urgency keeps you from thinking clearly. If you don't have time to pause, you don't have time to notice the warning signs. Sign number two, the compliments feel excessive, almost rehearsed. You're not just attractive, you're the most beautiful person they've ever seen. You're not just smart, you're more intelligent than anyone they've ever met. At first, this feels amazing, because who doesn't want to be admired like that? But notice the pattern. These compliments are often vague, repetitive, and focused on how special you make them feel, rather than specific things about who you actually are. That's because the goal isn't genuine admiration. The goal is to make you feel like you'd be a fool to walk away from someone who adores you this much. Sign number three, they isolate you from your support system slowly and subtly. It rarely looks obvious at first. It sounds like, "I just want you all to myself this weekend." Or, "Your friends don't really understand our connection the way I do." Or even, "I just don't trust people the way you do. Can we keep this between us for now?" Each comment on its own seems harmless, even sweet, but over time, the people who would normally notice something is off. Your friends, your family, the people who know you best, get pushed further and further away. And that's exactly the point. Because the fewer outside perspectives you have, the easier it becomes for one person to define your entire reality. Sign number four, they future fake constantly. They talk about your wedding before your third date. They mention baby names within the first month. They describe a 5-year future together in such vivid detail that it feels real, even though nothing has actually been built yet. This works because your brain doesn't fully distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When someone paints a detailed picture of your future together, part of your brain experiences it as if it's already happening. So even after the relationship cools off, Some part of you still believes that future is just around the corner if you can just get back to how things were. Sign number 5. Any boundary you set is met with guilt, withdrawal, or subtle punishment. You ask for a little space, and suddenly they go quiet for hours, making you anxious that you upset them. You mention wanting to see your friends, and they get hurt, asking why you don't want to spend time with them anymore. This isn't insecurity, it's a tactic. It teaches you, often without you even realizing it, that having needs of your own comes at a cost. Over time, you start shrinking your own boundaries just to avoid the discomfort of their reaction until you don't even recognize where your needs end and their expectations begin. Sign number 6, and this is the one most people miss completely. The affection becomes inconsistent right after you're hooked. Remember that dopamine flood from earlier. Here's where it gets used against you. Once you're emotionally invested, the intensity that once felt constant suddenly becomes unpredictable. One day, you get all their attention. The next day, they're distant and cold for no clear reason. This isn't them losing interest. This is intermittent reinforcement, the exact same psychological principle that makes slot machines so addictive. When a reward becomes unpredictable instead of constant, your brain doesn't crave it less. It craves it more because now you're chasing the high you used to have instead of simply enjoying a stable, healthy connection. Sign number 7, they mirror you so perfectly it feels like fate. They love the same music, the same shows, the same niche hobby you thought nobody else cared about. They say things like, I've never told anyone this before, but you just get me. This isn't always a coincidence, and it isn't always conscious manipulation either, but it works the same way, regardless of intent. Mirroring makes your brain register the other person as familiar and safe almost instantly, skipping the normal process of actually getting to know someone over time. The deeper problem is that some of what's being mirrored isn't real. It's a reflection of what you've revealed about yourself, handed back to you so convincingly that it feels like destiny instead of a tactic. Sign number 8, they compare you to their ex or to other people in ways that always somehow benefit them. You're so much more mature than anyone I've dated. Most people wouldn't understand me the way you do. At first, this sounds like a compliment, but notice what it's actually doing. It's quietly teaching you that your value is tied to how well you meet their needs, and that other people who didn't were somehow lesser for it. This sets up a private standard only the two of you share, which makes outside perspectives feel irrelevant before you've even had a chance to compare notes with someone you trust. So, why does this work on intelligent, self-aware people? Because love bombing doesn't target weakness. It targets a basic human need, the need to feel valued and chosen. The people most affected aren't naive. They're often deeply empathetic, people who give others the benefit of the doubt, people who want to believe in connection. That's not a flaw. That's just being human. The problem isn't you. The problem is that this tactic is specifically designed to bypass the slow, rational part of your brain and go straight for the emotional reward system instead. So, how do you actually protect yourself? Knowing the pattern is step 1, but here's what that looks like in practice. Track the pace, not the intensity. Write down, even mentally, how many weeks you've actually known this person versus how big the promises being made already are. A mismatch between those two numbers is the clearest signal you have. Keep at least one person outside the relationship in the loop on what's happening, even in small updates, because isolation works precisely by removing that outside check. And test boundaries early and on purpose. Ask for a normal amount of space within the first few weeks, not because you need it, but because someone's reaction to a small, reasonable boundary tells you more about them than 100 compliments ever will. If a small ask gets met with guilt or silence, that's not a future problem to deal with later. That's the answer, right at the start, before the dopamine has had time to take over. Real connection doesn't need urgency to survive. Only manipulation does. If you've recognized some of these signs in your own life, past or present, you're not foolish for missing them the first time. you were responding exactly the way your brain is built to respond. Understanding the pattern is what gives you the power to recognize it the next time it shows up, because now you know what it actually looks like underneath all that intensity. If this helped you make sense of something you've been through, hit subscribe because next week we're breaking down exactly how trauma bonding keeps people stuck in relationships long after the red flags appear, and why simply knowing better often isn't enough to leave.